And one more thing I thought I should say. Right as I learned the hips were not great, if not horrific, I had one doctor say, like, maybe you'll get out of pain if you start actually doing more. And he's like, I know you. One doctor said, maybe you'll get out of pain if you start actually becoming more physically active. So he said, the hips are great, there's no problem, I want you to do more. And he said, I know you've been in a lot of pain, so, there's nothing to do but typically do less because you hurt. He's like, just push through it and try to do more. And this was as I was starting to feel better anyway. And so I started falling a lot in the house, like I was 90 years old. I fell out of the shower, I fell in my kitchen, I fell walking with my son. I started just falling everywhere. That was another of my symptoms, was loss of balance. And so I thought, well, I really need to work on my balance. And walking was incredibly painful. If I tried to walk even a block, I would be in so much pain for a day or two afterwards, like the whole day. So I knew I couldn't walk for fitness, and I couldn't do anything that involved running, so no tennis, no basketball, no soccer, basically everything I'd ever done. So my kids played hockey at the time, so I thought, well, I'm going to start skating because it's not the same movement as walking, and maybe it'll help me strengthen my core. Someone had said, skating, hockey, like the bending down and stuff is really good for your core. So I started doing that, and it did kind of give me my life back a little bit. So I started really being able to function. Like, I would wake up in the morning, I'd be limping, I'd be hurting, but then I'd go skate, and I got a couple hours of pain relief from that. Like, I'd literally walk into the rink limping and hurting, and I would like push through the movements of skating, and I wasn't very good, of course. And I wore all this extra protective gear to, in case I fell. But at that point, I had these hips. Nobody will take them out of me. Nobody wants anything to do with me. So maybe if I fall and break a hip, I can finally get the hip out, the bad hip. So, so skating in full hockey gear has really helped me. And right about the time I start realizing, wow, I'm starting to really do better, which was right at 5 years after I got the hips put in, I finally got mobile again. I finally could function at what I would call a normal, acceptable level. I mean, it's of course not what I want, but, it's enough to make my kids their dinner and clean up afterwards, which, hadn't been able to do that in 5 years. Right about the time I'm able to walk again, I find out the hips are poisoning me. So now the problem is, I have to choose, do I want to lose my heart function and my memory, hearing, vision, all these other things? I have to decide between going back in, having 2 more massive revision surgeries in order to save my vital organs and my senses. The flip side is, I could leave them in, wait for all this to happen, wait for the heart damage, wait for the tissue destruction to get worse. It's just, there's no good choice. So I've taken a year and I've just tried to pretend this wasn't real. This isn't real. Because I don't know how I'm going to look at my kids and say, you know what happened 6 years ago? We're about to start it all over again. And I have to save my brain and my heart. And these revision surgeries are complicated. There are dislocations afterwards because the tissue's destroyed, the bone's destroyed. there are huge infection rates. I mean, it's even more complicated than a hip replacement, and I have to have two revision surgeries. I honestly, some days I'm like, maybe I'll just let it kill me, because the thought of going through all that again, I might rather die than go through that again and put my family through that again and lose our house again. We just got back in our own house. I just found a part-time job and the ability to stand long enough to hold it. And now I'm learning, oh, the hips are poisoning you. You gotta start this all over again. But if I'm gonna be a cripple, if I'm gonna be somebody who's locked in a wheelchair the rest of my life, which seems plausible, I at least want to be able to hear my kids talk. I at least want my heart to work. I don't want a heart transplant. That's what my friend's gonna have to have. She's gonna end up on the heart transplant list after she's already gotten a defibrillator, after she gets a pacemaker. So now a bunch of us are stuck in this, what I call medical purgatory, where we know the hips are bad, we gotta get them out, doctors don't want anything to do with us, but if we leave them in, we're risking our lives. Or if we leave them in, we're risking that we may never walk again, because this metal destroys the connective tissue and the muscle that you need to be able to walk, and that you need to be able to hold a hip together, a fake hip together. Like if you lose the muscles surrounding the hip, you just start dislocating all the time. And because that hasn't happened to me, I just can't bring myself to get. I can't. Until I know for sure, without a doubt, how quickly the damage is progressing. And because I don't trust medicine anymore, I don't trust doctors anymore. Because I haven't found anyone whom I trust who would also take me as a patient. I just haven't been able to do it. I almost would rather slip into dementia and heart failure rather than go through again what I've already been through. It just sucks. And I think, for what? So you can have a better beach house? Help the shareholders make a little more? I think a lot of the shareholders, if they knew how this money was being made, I wouldn't keep the stock of a company that made money this way. I don't want a settlement from a company that makes money this way. Because it has blood on it. It has death on it. And it doesn't fix. Settlement checks don't fix childhoods. Childhood's already happened. My kids already had their life destroyed by their mom's hip pain from her bad hips. That's what they're going to tell people when people say, what was like when you grew up? Well, my mom got these bad hips and she couldn't walk for 5 years and she was miserable and cried all the time. No settlement check gives my kids back a childhood, a decent childhood. The one they would have had if I had gotten a good hip replacement device. So I don't want their money. I just want them to stop hurting other people. I don't want this to happen to my kids someday, but it's still happening. Every single day, devices that have never been tested on humans pass through 510K and not the pre-market approval process. Every single day. This is how new medical products get to market. And it's terrifying. And I'm walking around and I feel like all my loved ones are in jeopardy. And everybody I see is in jeopardy. I mean, you go out and you think you're just going to work, and heaven forbid you get in a car wreck. One thing that happens in car wrecks a lot is you need a hip replacement. You break a hip, you need a hip replacement. You're unconscious. You don't get to say, hey, by the way, don't use anything that's never been tested yet on humans in me. You don't even know that that's the way it's done these days. And before you know it, you have a device in you that's going to kill your heart. I don't want that to happen anymore. I don't want that to happen to people I care about or people I don't know. So that's why I'm doing this. That's why I'm putting it all out there. They say when you lose everything, there's nothing left to lose, and I haven't lost everything yet, but it sure seems probable. But I'm going to go down and fight it. For the people who can. Oh, and one of the other things, when I went to New Jersey to speak at the shareholders meeting,